This is day 6 of the BT Outdoor Classic Hockey Tournament. Concussions are a risk for kids that play any kind of sport. When it comes to kids in hockey, though, the topic comes up a lot. Health specialist Leah Sarich here is with what parents need to understand about concussions and what kids need to do if they get a brain injury like that.
Right. So first of all, these are really quite common.
Very common.
Very, very common. So they see 1,500 kids every year at the Children's
Wow.
with a concussion. Yeah. And then we know that by the age of 16, 1 in 5 children will sustain a concussion. So that can be from many things, but often it is sport, and often within sports, it's hockey. So that's one of the things we have to be aware of. So, but besides wearing a really good helmet and making sure that strap is actually fastened and tight, and being good on your skates, there's not much you can really do to prevent a concussion. Even if you're wearing a helmet, you can still get a concussion.
Sure.
So let's be very clear about that. So I spoke with a neurologist, Dr. Karen Barlow. She's the director of the Brain Injury and Rehabilitation Program at the Alberta Children's Hospital, and she explains exactly what a concussion is in these kids. And let's be very clear, she says a concussion is in fact a brain injury.
So what can happen is either when the head is struck or when the body is hit forcefully, is that the head pivots on the neck. And what happens to the brain is that the brain can move inside the skull. And when the brain moves inside the skull, the nerve fibers can shear, or the brain can bump on the inside of the skull, so the brain bumps with the inside of the skull.
Scary stuff.
And so it's like a bruise on the brain.
Scary stuff. Nerve endings shearing.
Yeah, bruising
the brain tearing
on the brain.
away. Okay, yeah.
But really, you as a coach probably know this. You've got a little checklist. You know what you're looking for, right? So this is good. And they said this is a real improvement. So then they can get those kids off the ice right away. In fact, the phrase is, when in doubt, sit them out. A phrase you've probably heard. So she says first thing they need to do is get that child off the ice immediately and then do the assessment there. The other thing she said, children do not have to actually lose consciousness, of course, to sustain a concussion. So you're not looking for a child that's actually been out for a bit. But there are a few things you can watch for. So if all of a sudden you see your child take a hit, and then they start to get up and are skating in the wrong direction. Yeah, so you know, okay, wait, something's wrong here. So it's an altered state is what they call it. So they're confused. They may also complain of a headache. They may also have a headache, and that headache can happen right away or not even until the next day. So that's something to watch out for. But Dr. Barlow says most kids do not need actually to be transported in an ambulance. Most of them can maybe just go with parents in the car to the hospital, but she really says they should get checked out because they're looking for brain bleeds. It's very, very rare, but they do want to rule that out. So that's something to keep in mind. But Dr. Barlow also outlines what to do once a child has actually sustained a concussion.
For the most part, what a child really needs to do in those initial few days is to rest, and particularly physical rest. And as well, there's some evidence to suggest maybe also what we call cognitive rest. And what that means is we don't want a child to go in the next day and sit an exam in school or be doing a huge assignment at school. But what they should do is just take it easy for a few days. They can watch TV. That's okay. They can listen to music, but we don't really want them doing any heavy kind of studying or schoolwork for at least a few days so you see how they are.
And Dr. Barlow says most children will recover after a couple of days or at least a couple of weeks. But if they haven't recovered in a month, she wants to see them in her brain injury clinic. They need to have a look at them.
Okay, so kids have sustained an injury. When is it okay to get them back on the ice and playing again?
Back on the ice. Number one thing is they have to have no symptoms when they're at rest. Then they have to have no symptoms at a practice, and then they can play a game. That's how it works.
Just like all injuries, practice first because it's controlled, right?
Exactly. And really the bottom line is we do not want to get another concussion while they're still recovering from that first one. Because if you get another concussion, your risk of having another one goes up. If you have a concussion again within the 12 months of that first concussion, your symptoms are going to last longer and it's going to be harder to recover.
Wow. There you go. Sidney Crosby, of course, knows that all too well in the NHL. Yeah, he's a guy that did things correctly to come back, and now, of course, he's a gold medalist. There you go. All this information will be on Leah's blog, breakfasttelevision.ca. Just follow the appropriate links. We have another